All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So hit the bell for notifications, comment down below, and upvote the video itself. Of course, subscribe to the channel. I'm here with Tim Thomas. We're here to talk about the 8-8, 0-4 Ole Miss men's basketball team. They do have Georgia coming into the building this weekend. Tim, it feels like every game is just one game. I got a little bit under the weather and I fell asleep, and then I looked up and I saw what had happened in the course of the game, and it looked like midway through the second half, just like the Mississippi State game, there was a little bit of a lull. Auburn went on a run and Ole Miss had no way to fight back. How crazy am I there?
Yeah, you're right. Ole Miss really started out good. They started out strong. The guys were taken to the hole. They were even hit a few threes. I was thinking, hey, we got a new game here. And playing at home, it's like that a lot of times. Playing at home is so much easier. You're familiar with all the surroundings, and you got your own crowd. And but in the second half, all of a sudden, they just kind of stopped. It was almost like they turned the water off. They just quit being aggressive. They stopped playing great defense. And Wendell Green, the super guard Auburn has, and the guy inside Broome, them guys just took over, and we didn't have anybody to guard them and that could stop them.
Yeah, and it's gotten to the point where you can see what Kermit's plan was at the beginning of the season. You take a Deshaun Ruffin, you match him with a Matthew Morrell, and you get a bunch of piano carriers like we're told, and they come in here and do all the dirty work for them. Well, obviously Kermit, he misjudged how well Deshaun Ruffin was. He's not where he normally is at the moment. And because of that, Ole Miss has a little bit of a point guard issue, right?
Yeah, just talking about Wendell Green, just comparing apples to apples, I guess it's not true. Those guys are really good. Deshaun and Abram and Caldwell, they really try hard. I think they got their heads on straight. They're really trying to do their best. But you got someone like Wendell Green that comes in, and they cannot guard. We talk about defensive, they're a liability, all three guys. They cannot guard a guy like Wendell Green. He just took NBA moves here, there, anywhere he wanted to go. He scored 24 or 26. He just took over. Then when he couldn't score, if he was covered up, he'd get into Broome, and we didn't have nobody to stop him. And if he was covered up, he'd throw it out to Flanagan, and I think he knocked in 2 or 3 threes. So those guys, as we said a minute ago before we started, they got at least 3 guys, probably more, that are NBA-type guys. And we were talking, hey, okay, Ole Miss players, how many on Ole Miss, this team, could play for Alabama, Tennessee, even Auburn? Maybe Morrell, maybe another or 2 if they're playing well. But that's a talent issue. That's their players are better than our players. And right now it's showing up really bad. Now, if you play as a team, a lot of times you can hide a lot of that. If this guy does this well and roll, this guy plays this role, this guy defensive role like Miles Burns, and this guy inside block shots like Akube. And then you got the guards out there taking turns, hitting threes and driving to the hole and dishing out. But a lot of that ain't happened for a period of the whole game. We did it real well for a good half. We were ahead, I think, by 1 at half, and we did pretty good for the first few minutes of the second half. And it seemed like we just couldn't get it done.
Now, tell me if I'm crazy here, because, you played for Bob Weltlett, who is a disciple, I believe, of Bobby Knight, who really brought in the motion offense, and that just dominated like the 70s and the 80s, and that's how college basketball was played for just the longest time. Free-flowing, the team going back and forth, and now college basketball, they've NBAized it to where there's basically isolation plays where they try to get 2-on-2s and 1-on-1s and clear outs and things like that. And because of that, when you try to play the game that the superiorly talented teams are playing, you're in a severe disadvantage. Is the only way out of this is to do something like you guys did, is just 5 players, get everything you can, lots of movement, lots of motion, and try and score and win the game that way?
A lot of good points there. Back in our day, defense was king, and today it is to a certain extent, but you got to be able to score. We didn't score as many back then. These days, with the way the offenses run, like run and gun in football, you got to be able to score points. And we got a couple of guys at times, as we talked about, but when you're playing other teams that have 3 to 4 guys that can score anywhere underneath, out 3, 12-footers, it's really hard for a team like Ole Miss right now. Their talent level is not up to, like, as we talked about, Alabama and Tennessee. So what you got to do is play as a team. As you mentioned, you got to really pass the ball around. And the motion offense is really good, but usually these days they're trying to find a certain guy like Morrell, or maybe even want to get it inside a couple of times. There's a reason for this madness. There's a reason to get the ball to certain people. And right now Morrell's not coming through. Yet last night he hit a couple threes, but he finally just decided, and I'm sure Kermit helped him decide, to take to the ball at the hole. And he did fine. He ended up with 24, I believe. He did really well, taking the hole, got a lot of fouls, got a lot of free throws. So he did well, but everybody else did not.
Yeah, and if you look at the schedule right now, I think we have Georgia this weekend. South Carolina's coming up, although they just won at Rupp, so who knows? They're like net 240 a team winning in Rupp Arena. I don't know what to do with that at the moment. But the schedule theoretically should ease up because you had Tennessee, Alabama, at Mississippi State, Auburn, bam, 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 right in a row. Ole Miss has to start stringing some wins and stacking wins together. This season has the potential to get away from Kermit. Am I crazy there?
No, you're definitely right. We got to get Georgia this Saturday. I mean, it's a must win. You talk about a must win, and then we go to South Carolina. I'm saying it's a must win. Then you go to Arkansas. Missouri is at home. Then you go out to Oklahoma State for the Big 12 challenge, SEC challenge. So I'm not sure how their team is. I hadn't kept up with them. But we got to win at least 2 of these, really, 2 out of 4 to really say we got a chance to make anything of this season. If we win 1, it's going to be tough. If we don't win any at all, Keith Carter's going to get involved.
Yeah, and it's getting to the point. You really hate to have this conversation because what is it, January 12th when this episode airs? You're just like, will Kermit make it to February? Will Kermit make it to March? And it's the way I describe it is like these games in and of themselves they're not make it or break games. But whenever you start adding them up and one stacks on top of the other, eventually the weight just becomes too much to lift and the decision just gets out of your hands.
It's really tough to see. I love Kermit to death. I think he started off his tenure here really good. They had some really good seasons, and they had the COVID year, and then last year was a lot of people got hurt. But this year, everybody's back pretty much. Everybody's pretty well healed up. Ruffin may be not quite there, but this is do or die. The way I understand it, Keith Carter said NCAA tournament or else. That's the way I understood it. Now, he might have softened up a little bit on that, but that's what I understood. The girls' team is doing really well, if you noticed, and they're definitely looking like they're going to the NCAA tournament. But this men's team, right now, we're at a standstill. So we got to get ready for Georgia this weekend. We got to get that win. We need to go to South Carolina because they're not that great either. They did beat Kentucky, but we found out they're not that great this year either. Some of the things we've been talking about, people in Lexington are talking about with the coach there. So a lot of these same issues, toughness, a lot of these not hitting shots, a lot of these same things we went over the last few weeks, they're talking about that very strongly in Lexington.
Yeah, I think what we're realizing and finding out is honestly the SEC isn't as deep as we thought it was. Arkansas, without that big score, their big name player, I think they're 1-3 in the conference right now. They got boat raced by Auburn at Auburn. So if he's not in there, Ole Miss can potentially get that one. South Carolina is not a very good team, but they beat Kentucky. LSU is up and down. There's several teams that's okay. You have 3 or 4 of them that are, good. And then it's just like Missouri, maybe Mississippi State, and just a bunch of dudes. I mean, that's the way it sits right now, I think.
Bama's number 1, in my opinion. They have outplayed everyone. They beat Houston, who was rated number 1 now. They beat them at Houston, which is That's not thought of. That's hard to do. You go to someone's place and they're that good as they are. And they've won several other games. I won't quote them all, but Bama's really good. As we talked about, Tennessee is pretty good. Auburn is good as we saw last night. Some of these other teams, we have a chance to beat them at home. It's going to be really hard to beat anybody with the team that we have, just being honest, away from home. But at home, the rest of this 14 more games we got in the SEC, we have got to at least win half of those. And if we can sneak an upset here, or upset there at some of these lower echelon teams, then maybe we can get back in the picture. But if not, it's going to be a troubled year, and Kermit, his job will be looked at closely.
What's the name of the player at Alabama? Is that Brandon Wilson?
Miller.
Brett Miller?
Really super, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody from, believe it or not, Auburn today, and he said the difference between him and Jabari Smith is he is more selfish in all the good ways than Jabari Smith. The things that Bruce Pearl desperately wanted Jabari to do last year, Brandon does it this year. And that it's like number one overall is where he is trending. There's not many out there like him.
A lot of people are comparing him to Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant's probably one of the better players in the NBA now, or certainly was and still is to a certain extent. So if you're compared to Kevin Durant, you're a super player. He is. And there's a few great players around. Like we talked about, Auburn has that Broom guy inside. He transferred in. He's really good. Wendell Green. Alabama has several guys other than Miller. Tennessee has 2 or 3 guys. So it's a good, solid league. But like you said, Bama's number one. A couple other guys kind of lingering there. And then the rest of the ones here, last 8 or so, it could go either way any night. You better win at home. And you need to sneak in a few upsets along the way to have a chance.
Yeah, if you're looking for an Ole Miss surprise that Ole Miss could jump up and get, honestly, that's turned into the Kentucky game, right? Because they're just falling apart.
Could be, yeah. He's going to have to turn that around, or they're going to be talking to him. There's 24,000 there every night. I don't care who they play. Sisters of the Poor, they're 24,000 there. Now, at Ole Miss, I think they said we had 59 there last night, 5,900. I don't know if that's true or not. I saw some of the pans. So that's another issue. When the crowd stops coming, if they do, that's something that's going to cause problems in the long run for Kermit. But hopefully the crowds keep coming. I encourage everyone to. I encourage everyone to stay behind him, stay behind this team, and let's try to make us through this bad spot. And hopefully we can beat Georgia this Saturday and maybe upset there at South Carolina, and then make our way through these other games and win some of these.
Yeah, it's about stacking wins. Just get the first one, and then you just try and stack them and get as many as you can get. Because at home, they've played well. The Tennessee game, they honestly had that one little drought, and they got away from them. Same thing happened down in Starkville. They had a chance to get that one. They just went into a shot desert and would not score the basketball. So they're going to put it together against somebody. I don't know who, but they're going to get somebody this year.
Yeah, last night in Kermit's post-game interview, he just said all we can do is keep working. He was getting this question and that question and this question. And every one of them, he was getting hotter and madder, I could tell. But, what do you do? They're reporters. That's their job. And you got to do your job. So he finally ended up to say, we just got to keep working, guys. We got to keep working. That's what we're going to do. The guys that want to play hard, the ones that want to do what's right, they're going to give it all they got. They're going to rebound. They're going to get loose balls. That's the guys that's going to play. And we're going to try to get some guys to make some shots. They asked Keith Carter in his interview on 24/7, what does the basketball team need to do? He said, that's not really hard. Make shots. They got to make shots. I have my little theory about that, and I'm not going to go any further with it. But they have got to make shots, and more than Morrell. A couple of these other guys have got to step up and make some shots. He cannot pull the whole team by himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. It's everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. That's Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Tim, thank you very much for stopping by. We're going to keep doing this, talking about Ole Miss men's basketball every week. Hopefully they will give us something to crow about and be happy about in the near future.
yeah, let's go get these dogs this Saturday, the basketball dogs. I know we ain't going to handle the football dogs, but let's get the basketball dogs this Saturday, and let's get a streak going.
Yeah, the funny thing is, they put a schedule up on there of Georgia's football schedule next year, and they're like, "What is this?" And I guess talking about how easy it is, and you look on it and you see that they play at Tennessee right after Ole Miss, and I was like, best case scenario for Ole Miss. Yeah.
I hope so. Anything can happen in any game. You know, we could get started here. We can get a hot spot. A couple of these younger guys, you know, mature a little bit and start playing. I saw Ewing last night. He played better, and Kuba played better. So several guys are kind of just waiting to bust out, and hopefully will this Saturday against Georgia. I hope so.
Yeah, whatever has to happen, they need to figure out a way to get some confidence in these kids, because these kids, when they're confident, they're okay. But whenever they're not, they are fragile. They're a fragile team right now.
Yeah, Morrell's still fragile also. No one on the team is shooting it with confidence. And hopefully that'll happen this Saturday.
All right. Tim, thank you very much for stopping by. We'll check in with you next week, man.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. God bless.
All right, bud. All right, God bless.